And if you'd like, there we go. Got it. So good morning, uh, bone crushers. I joke that's the Geshe Zopa always used to say, we're going to be studying it's almost like chewing dry bones, so that when we study these philosophical subjects. So we're going to begin with a couple of prayers as people are coming in. So you've got your text up there. Oh, there it is, taking refuge in generating bodhicitta. So try to think of the words, the meaning of the words. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. When you say, I go for refuge, think of the causes. You have fear or trepidation about falling into the suffering of the lower realms in the future. A better motivation is fear of remaining in cyclic existence in the future. Better motivation is that, that because of not taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I'm not able to fully practice the bodhisattvas' deeds and so forth. So I take Mahayana refuge, until we are enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly through the collections of merit and wisdom that I create through listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrators. Sangye chodang soke chognam la jangchu badu dagni kapsu chi dagi chunin gi pe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma today, listening, contemplating, and meditating, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrators. And that is a condensation of the methods of accumulating merit and purification, offering a mandala. By offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy the pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please send down, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, the analogy being the clouds in his Dharmakaya mind. Release a rain of vast and profound Dharma. Vast means the extensive teachings on conventional reality, including bodhicitta and so forth, and the profound meaning the teachings on the profound emptiness, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Radha Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, a couple more people have come, Paul and John. Paul, is Jennifer still recovering?
Yes and no. She got back yesterday and had to hit the ground running because Kadrala's in town, and so she's now preparing for Kadrala's teaching tomorrow. So
okay, so she'll catch up later.
Yeah, she was hoping to make the class, but I suspect she's going to be preoccupied.
And hello, John. So let's begin with a little meditation to set the motivation. We just said a Sangye Chodang Soke Chognam La and offered short mandala. Sit comfortably, relax your body, relax your mind, locate your respiration, recognize it, and keep it in mind to the exclusion of everything else. although there are many methods in the meditation handbooks on where to place your attention and when keeping the breathing in mind, keeping it in mindfulness, such as watching the air, the breathing from your nostrils at the top of your lip, the entrance to the nostrils, or watching your belly going out and in, or other many variety of methods. In the end, what you're going to develop is a mental image of the air element, the wind element. It doesn't mean a visual image, like seeing Buddha, a mental image of the Buddha or something. It's an understanding, the same way that we get a mental image of the clear light nature of the mind later and other things. The breathing, the wind is that which is light and moving. And the physical breath that you're keeping in mind has that quality. Recognize when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. And with the mind slightly relaxed like that, getting rid of by keeping in mind the breathing, getting rid of the rapid moving thoughts and plans and worries and memories and so forth. Now bring your attention to the more subtle object of your mental consciousness. Let go of attention to the breathing. Let it fade into the background. What's on your mind? Here, that may be a little bit more apparent now that you're watching the consciousness. You may be in a happy state. You may have mental happiness or mental unhappiness, or you may feel physical pain or pleasure that your mind, your mental consciousness recognizes. You may be bummed out, you might be angry, you might be, acquisitive, have some minds of desire. You might have a feeling of confusion. All of these are events within your mental consciousness, whether they be feelings or emotions, or by association, the succession of various images and thoughts that come to your mind, one making connection with the other, leading into what sometimes is called monkey mind, like the monkey jumping from one branch to another, making associations, thoughts coming up, letting go of all of those objective thoughts, depriving them of their energy to continue by placing your attention instead on the substratum of the mind within which they're arising, the nature of that mind. Its clear light nature, like the sky within clouds, within which clouds form. Birds fly through, leaves move through, wind, dust. But behind all of those, there's the clear nature of sky. Here, there's the clear nature of your mind, which is itself not soiled by the thoughts. Let go of the attention to the objective thoughts and instead, as though turning your back on them and looking back at your mind, look at the mind that's perceiving them. If the sense of I is prominent, sense of ego, yourself, look back, turn away from that. Try to perceive the mind, the nature of the mind that's apprehending that. And in so doing, you're depriving the thoughts of their longevity. They begin to diminish. And even if they are to appear later because of habit, they're less intense. The conventional nature of the mind is that which is clear in knowing, especially the clarity here is its lack of obstructing the arisal or reabsorption of events within the mind. It's unstained by them. It forms no obstacle. It's what's recognized as our conventional Buddha nature, also called the developmental Buddha nature, because of which we can develop all the good qualities, get rid of all of the faulty ways of thinking, behaving, find real happiness, become an authentic being. The fact that we can recognize that right now and feel some joy about that situation, that we have this resource, whatever else is happening in our lives, is due to the fact that we have at the moment a life of leisure and endowment, the 8 freedoms or leisures from unfree states of being born in hell and animal realm and so forth, and the 10 endowments or richnesses that we have created the karma for in previous lives and now our experiences in the human realm, what the Buddha called in this auspicious moment. It's not going to come again soon if we don't just left to our ordinary devices where our delusions, our klesha arise and we create negative karma. It's something very rare and precious in that we can use it to develop the cause of succession of human lifetimes in the future to continue practicing the Dharma, or in the very best case, we can use this life now to achieve liberation or enlightenment in this very life, working on the causes of that eventual definite goodness, by developing renunciation, bodhicitta, wisdom that realizes emptiness, purifying the karmic seeds in our mind stream that prevent realizations and would propel us into the lower realms in the future. To use this life simply to reach the lower of those two goals, liberation, our own nirvana, arhatship, from the Mahayana point of view would be selfish, because all living beings around us that we have up till now only felt affection for those that are close and dear to us, our friends and family, either ignored strangers or felt antipathy toward our enemies, perceived threats. All of them are equally been our mother numberless times and have been depthlessly kind. It's only the difference of time. In those lives when they were our mother, we recognized their kindness. When they were our friends and our father and others that were close to us, our mentors. Right now, we've forgotten that. We can recall that by remembering that all sentient beings have been infinitely close to us, intimately close to us, and they are exactly equal to us in a deeper sense, in wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to be happy. The profound logic that can lead to the practice of the equalizing and exchanging self and others, quicker method to develop bodhicitta. In order to help sentient beings who have been our mothers, it's not enough simply to repay their kindness right now with advice, health, care, taking them to the hospice and feeding them and helping them. It's very good and useful and creates merit. But all of that, even instructions, this lifetime, how to lead this life, how to be happy, how to make money, how to get a job, how to keep a job, how to have friends, all of that is transitory. It will be lost in the future. What we can give them is Dharma advice, how to have deeper wisdom and serenity now, peace of mind, and how to create the causes for future happiness by practicing the Dharma, avoiding non-virtue. To perfectly do that for all sentient beings who have a range from those in the hell realms, those with very negative karma, all the way up to those who are on the threshold of enlightenment, we ourselves have to become enlightened. To do that, we need to accumulate the collections of merit, virtuous karma, and so forth, and wisdom, the understanding of emptiness. To do that, we need instruction, how to accumulate merit, how to purify negativity, how to meditate on emptiness, which is explained in the text that we're studying. Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Vatara. So think, for that purpose of making the best use of this auspicious moment that I have right now, this life of leisure and endowment, to pursue the goal of enlightenment for the sake of all mother sentient beings, I'm going to listen, contemplate, and meditate on the material today with that goal in mind, the goal being to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, so that I can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error leads sentient beings out of whatever realm they're in now, whatever state they're in, successively, if necessary, in some cases, as they're on the threshold of realizations, immediately lead them into stable, everlasting happiness. I'm going to participate in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all mother sentient beings. Bring your attention back, present. Hello. Good to see you. I wonder if anyone has any questions left over. Don, you have any questions you've been harboring? No, you're okay. Diana, you've been helping mom. Anything?
Yeah, helping mom and then getting caught up with work here.
Again, tech season,
Yeah.
right? Or what you do some other kind of work. Any questions that you've been that have been vexing you?
Not at
No?
this time.
Okay. So Rachel, Anna, anything? You okay? John? Okay. So we're going to begin. So we ended, and we're going to begin with this sentence: anger directed toward those who are engaged in monastic life as well as toward bodhisattvas, which is in Jimpa's book, page 140, in Hopkins' text translation, Compassion in Tibetan Buddhism, page 216, I believe. This is just after some other material that we covered. And so just to review that, maybe a page or two before that, there's a stanza from the Abhidharmakosha Bhasham. Does anyone know what that is? Anyone know these words? Some, I think Paul and John know, but let's see. Don, do you know what that Abhidharmakosha Bhasham means? You're muted, but I can see you saying no. You don't know what that means. Doris, do you know what is Abhidharmakosha Bhasham?
Bhasham implies that it's a commentary on the Abhidharmakosha by Vasubandhu.
Right. So Bhasham generally means, correct me if I'm wrong, usually means auto commentary. So Sean says, I guess it is the commentary, not the actual text. Well, so it's the auto commentary. That means there were other people who wrote commentaries to the Abhidharmakosha. Those are usually that means the karikas, the verses, but Vasubandhu wrote his own commentary to them, so he could explain what he was trying to say there. So in that text, it says, as for karma's fruitions, those heavier, those closer in time, those most habitual, and those committed earliest among all karma, these are reaped first. And I wanted to explain a little bit about that. Did I explain before where that's found in the Abhidharmakosha Bhasham? Or does anyone know? Paul, do you know where that's found?
I don't remember, don't recognize it.
So one might think it might be in the chapter on karma, right? Yeah, one would be wrong. I was trying to find it. It actually is in. So how many chapters are there in the Abhidharmakosha? Does anyone know?
9, I guess.
there are 8, and then
and then
there's
there's a
a
supplement.
9th, which is added on afterwards. It's not, none of the karikas are part of the Abhidharma Kosha karika. And it's in that 9th chapter on refuting the self that this is quoted. And it's actually attributed to, some people attribute it to Rahula. You know who Rahula was? Does anyone? Karen, do you know who Rahula was?
He was the Buddha's son, correct? Rahula?
Rahula? Was he his son or his half-brother?
No.
John, Paul? Who knows? Oh, Rocio knows.
I think it was the son, and if I recall correctly, Rahula means like a chain that ties you somewhere.
Rahula also refers to eclipse. When there's some astronomical phenomena in Indian astrology when there's an eclipse, Rahula has obscured the sun or the moon or something like that. So anyway, you can check whether Rahula was Buddha's half-brother or whether it was his son. Who was Nanda?
It was like his cousin.
That's a cousin, I think.
Who? Rahula or Nanda?
No, Nanda, I believe, is a cousin, and at least in one of the Sanskrit biographies of the Buddha himself introduces his son as Rahula. He says, "Let his name be Rahula Fetter."
Right. Okay, so that
Bondage.
Rahula is his son. His half-brother, or some people call his cousin, might be Nanda. Anyway, okay, so it's Yasumitra, who wrote a commentary to Abhidharma Kosha, another person, not a Sangha, said that this was said by Rahula. So it's not something that Vasubandhu said. So the way that it's translated by Jimpa, I think is wrong. He says, as for karma's fruitions, those heavier, those closer in time, those most habitual, and those committed earliest among all karmas, these are reaped first. What is actually meaning, like say, for instance, heavier or heavy is right, but those closer in time, I think it's just those which are close. That means not the heaviest, those who are next heaviest, that are proximate to being heavy. Like when we talk about the root delusions, and what's the word for the secondary? Does anyone know the Tibetan for the secondary kleshas? The newa nyonmong, so that those that are close to the delusion, so the secondary ones. So I think what it's saying is, generally it's saying, when karma ripens, what's going to ripen first, when you're talking about, let's say, throwing you into the next rebirth, is the heaviest karma. In one sense, that can be the heaviest karmas that are in your mind stream in terms of their nature, like murder is generally heavier than idle gossip. But also the heaviest kinds of karmas are those actions of immediate retribution. But even small karmas that have been deposited in your mind stream for a long, long time increase over time. It's said that killing an insect after how many days? I think is after 9 days, the karma has increased. If it's not purified, the karma of that has increased to the weight of having killed a human at that point. That's why in Buddhism we try to do purification every day, not just in general, but to keep the karma from increasing, the karma that we've created, doing 21 recitations of Vajrasattva and so forth, or prostrations to the 35 Buddhas if you're still able to bend down, or to just recite the liturgy and so forth. So I think what it means is, as Jeffrey had translated in his commentary, actions cause fruition in cyclic existence, first the heavy, then the proximate. That when you translate it as proximate rather than saying closer in time doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Then those that are accustomed, that karma, which is once you've used up the heaviest karma, and those that are next, then after that, the next heavy, even if they're not so heavy, those things that you were habituated in, that leave many, many karmic seeds of a similar type, they will ripen. And then what's left? That's essentially what this is saying. So we mentioned that, and then as stated here, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary said, as stated here, whatever karma happens to be reaped first, virtuous or non-virtuous, this blocks the space for other karmic fruits to be reaped. So that's essentially bringing up the topic of, so generally what we're talking about is what kind of things can prevent virtuous karma from ripening, right? We're talking about anger, destroying those, anger at other people, anger at bodhisattvas. Anger in general is like a fire that can cause the virtuous karmas that we've accumulated to lose their strength, their potency, either to destroy them completely or to put off their ripening later. So this is brought up in that context. So there's some arguments some people are making that heavy negative karma only sort of prevents virtuous karma from ripening because they've matured and the virtuous karma doesn't have a chance to mature. So let's go further to where we were starting today. So at the just at that section where I had mentioned at the beginning, furthermore, the consequences are the same regardless of whether one has recognized one's object to be a bodhisattva. If you get angry at bodhisattva, whether or not you recognize, still is just like saying, oh, I didn't know it was a bodhisattva, therefore I shouldn't destroy any virtuous karma because I got angry with him or her. Doesn't matter. And whether one's grounds for being angry are valid or not. Oh, he really deserved my anger. That doesn't cut the mustard. It's still, getting angry still destroys your virtuous karma. In view of this, we must strive with all our efforts to prevent anger in general, as Nadine was bringing up just before class, this recognizing this, and in particular, anger directed toward those who are engaged in monastic life in general, and especially toward bodhisattvas. Okay, so that's where we'd gotten last time. So then the text says, the Akashagarbha Sutra states that a root infraction will destroy virtues that have been generated in the past. And if you look at that note in the back of the text, it just mentions the Akashagarbha Sutra. So what kind of root infraction is that talking about? Does anyone know? Rachel, your mouth is moving.
Would we be talking about the bodhisattva vows?
It's not talking about a bhikshu's root infraction? Killing, stealing?
I don't know. I was guessing that it would be bodhisattva vows.
Yeah, good guess. Good guess. So very, very short here. If you were to look at the bodhisattva vows, how many root bodhisattva vows are there? Anyone who's keeping track of these things?
18.
Rachel's on top of it. Anyone think there's 14?
8.
Yeah, no, you said 18. I said, anyone think there's 14?
That's the tantric.
Okay. I was trying to trust someone. Say, okay, good. Okay. So there are 14 tantric root and fractions generally, but here we're talking about a bodhisattva and root vows. So where do they come from? Does anyone know? Diana, do you know the origin of the bodhisattva vows, 18 root vows?
I don't, Venerable.
Does anyone know? Let me see. No one's volunteering here.
Did it come from the second Panchen Lama?
The second Panchen Lama, Sean is thinking. I don't even, is Sean on the screen here? Sean is a disembodied voice. I don't see even a placeholder for him. Oh, there he is. Yeah, there he is. Okay, I thought I didn't see you. Panchen Lama, I think goes back to the Buddha, so the Panchen Lama in Tibet, he didn't, maybe he wrote some texts explaining vows, but that's not it. So generally in the different Buddhist traditions, like in Japan and other countries that practice Mahayana Buddhism, they have different enumerations of the vows, right? Does anyone know any of those enumerations? The 4 great vows or the 10 great vows, or
that's the one I remember. There's 4 great vows in Lankavatara.
right? What were they? Do you remember?
No, to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. I guess that's one.
Yeah. So sometimes it's said that some people say the Bodhisattva vow is, I will not achieve enlightenment until everyone else is enlightened. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay. So who could give a critique of that? Could that be a Bodhisattva vow? Rocio says no. Why not?
Because there's sentient, like innumerable sentient beings, so you will never become a Buddha. If this is literal, then
Okay,
there's
right.
no chance to be a Buddha.
Well, yeah, if you the point being that one wants to become a Buddha in order to lead sentient beings to enlightenment. So if they just get to enlightenment by themselves or by your help before you're enlightened, that would be called what kind of bodhicitta, Nadine? Is that if you know?
The shepherd and the king and
Yeah.
The one who takes the boat over the river. I
Right,
don't know
the
the
boat.
word.
Yeah.
The
So
boatman.
it's said in the Prajnaparamita teachings that there are different kinds of bodhicitta. King-like bodhicitta is, I will achieve enlightenment, and from that stance, so to say, that place, I will lead all sentient beings to enlightenment. That's the actual meaning of bodhicitta. There's the boatman-like bodhicitta, where one has a really practicing cherishing others and seeing the disadvantages of self-cherishing, where you think, I shouldn't think I'm going to get there first. I should be like the boatman with the pole, like in the story Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, right? If anyone's read, leading the people from one shore to the other, get them from samsara to the shore of nirvana or enlightenment and so forth. And then there's the shepherd-like bodhicitta, even more self-effacing, is that the right term? Like the shepherd who gets all the sheep into the corral first before he or she goes in and has their, what do they say in Australia? Their meal, their kit. I can't remember the Australian expression. So shepherd-like bodhicitta and boatman-like bodhicitta are not actual bodhicitta, but those bodhisattvas who practice that are said to make very rapid progress in the path by practicing that way, because they are subduing any kind of egoistic aim. I must achieve enlightenment, But so from the Tibetan point of view, philosophical view, the vow that says, I will not achieve enlightenment until everyone else has, that sounds like kind of like the shepherd-like bodhicitta, right? If it's understood that way, that's not the actual thing. So there are different enumerations of vows. So that there are different sources for these 18 bodhisattva vows. One of them is the Akashagarbha Sutra. In fact, that's what's quoted here. It says, the Akashagarbha Sutra states that a root infraction will destroy the virtues that have been generated in the past. So I will read you from translation, again, the wonderful 84,000 website. You can look 84,000.com, I think it is. You can find the Akashagarbha Sutra. And so this is starting with verse 146, if you download that. So it says, the Bodhisattva Maitreya, who's in conversation with the Buddha, and they're talking about Akashagarbha and so forth. So the Bodhisattva Maitreya says, Bhagavan, sentient beings stained by the root transgression forfeit their roots of virtue and are bound for the lower realms. Sentient beings, he's saying. That means if they don't purify that, right? That doesn't mean you break your bodhisattva vow and you're going to, you can purify that and you can reinstate those vows. Because when you break the root vow, one of these, in this case, 18 vows that we're talking about, the vows are no longer functioning to create merit for you, and you're creating negative karma and so forth. But that can be purified, and you can regenerate those vows by taking them again. You can take the bodhisattva vows 20 times a day. Every time you think you might have broken them, you can retake them. It's not so hard. So Maitreya says to the Buddha, Bhagavan, sentient beings stained by root and transgressions forfeit their roots of virtue and are bound for the lower realms. They are in a state of transgression and will be deprived of any happiness of the God and human realms until they purify that, right? Yet this son of noble family brings about these beings' fulfillment with the bliss of higher realms and liberation. What are these particular transgressions? So when he says this son of noble family, he's talking about the bodhisattvas, right? So the Bhagavan answers, Buddha answers, son of noble family, Kulaputra, this is typical, when we talk about the bodhisattvas, son of noble family. There are 5 root transgressions for a kshatriya on whom royal authority has been bestowed. Oh, who's paying attention? Anda, do you know what a kshatriya is? Someone, look at some people are avoiding their eyes. Rachel, do you know what kshatriyas are? What was when Shakyamuni Buddha took rebirth? Well, from the Tushita heaven, what caste was he born into? Paul, do you know?
I believe that was the Kshatriya caste.
Yeah, Kshatriya caste. So
warrior, so-called warrior caste.
So-called warrior caste, but also the, let's say, it's also the royal, because royalty often is of that warrior caste. So it says, son of noble family, there are 5 root transgressions for a kshatriya on whom royal authority has been bestowed. So that means these are 5 of the vows come in regard to this. So let me read a little bit further. By committing any of these root transgressions, a Kshatriya on whom royal authority has been bestowed, that means they become royalty, they've been empowered and so forth, they become king or something like that. By committing any of these root transgressions, a Kshatriya on whom royal authority has been bestowed will forfeit all previously generated roots of virtue and will be in a state of transgression. So this is what this quotation that Lama Tsongkhapa is referring to here. Such a Kshatriya will be deprived of all happiness of the gods and human realms and will go to the lower realms. What are these 5 transgressions? So this is now verse 148. Son of noble family, for a Kshatriya on whom royal authority has been bestowed, stealing from a place of worship, stealing that which has been offered to the local Sangha or the Sangha of the 4 directions, or inciting someone to steal it, these constitute the first transgression. Have you heard that before? So generally, when we talk about the 18 Bodhisattva root vows, as they're mentioned now, the first one is praising yourself and denigrating others, right? So where does this come in? Not giving wealth dharma, not forgiving someone who apologizes, abandoning the Mahayana, stealing. So maybe number 5, stealing offerings to the 3 jewels. And in the version I've got here, it has in parentheses king vows. So this is the first of the vows from the Akashagarbha Sutra. So there are of the 18 vows, I think let's see, 18. 14 come from the Akashagarbha Sutra, 4 come from another sutra, and 1 come from the Sutra of Skillful Means. Does that add up to 18? No.
I
So
think
13.
you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, 13 plus 4 plus 1. So let's just read a little bit further. You can see the details later. Okay, so that was the first one, stealing, which in our tradition of 18 now is the 5th vow. So what's the 6th vow in our present one? Abandoning the Dharma, right? Something like that. This is also called King's Vow. So stanza 149 in the Akashagarbha Sutra says, next, forcing someone to give up the Dharma, whether it is the instructions on the Shravaka's definite deliverance, how they achieve nirvana, the instructions on the Pratika Buddha's definite deliverance, or the instructions on the Mahayana definite deliverance, as well as creating obstacles to the teachings or concealing them. All of these constitute the second root transgression. Okay, so I won't go through all of them. I'll skip over some of these. So there are 5 transgressions that are called royal transgressions. Okay, the king's transgressions. Then he says a little bit later on, well, he says, son of noble family, if a Kshatriya on whom royal authority has been bestowed commits any of these 5 root transgressions, this Kshatriya will forfeit all previously generated roots of virtue, and so forth. And then the next verse, when that happens, the Bodhisattva Akashagarbha will manifest his birth and appear in an uncivilized land or another place, manifesting for some in the form, in the attire and conduct of a monastic, and for others in the form, attire, and conduct of a Brahmin. However and whenever he manifests, he will explain the Dharma to such Kshatriyas who have broken their vows, So kind of the implication is that when our preceptors criticize our bodhisattva behavior, they might be emanations of Akasha Garbha. So he comes about that. So then the next set of vows, Maitreya, the Buddha said, the transgressions of a minister are also 5 in number. So the king has certain powers, like they can steal and these things, they can give the commands to be stolen. Now ministers have lesser power. So what are these 5? Stealing from a place of worship or from the Sangha of the 4 directions is considered the first root transgression of a minister. So this duplicates the first one of the king's lineage. So when he goes through all of these vows in the Akasha Garbha Sutra, some of them are redundant, so they're left out in the total count. Let's see. Destroying a village, a district, or a town constitutes the second root transgression. Furthermore, for a minister forcing someone to give up the Dharma, as well as creating. Furthermore, for a minister harming those who have taken ordination with the Bhagawan, and so forth, these constitute the 5. Then there's another set of 5, son of noble family. There are 5 root transgressions for Shravakas. Which are these 5? They are killing, taking what has not been given, impure conduct, lying, and physically harming or drawing blood from the body of a Tathagata. These are the 5. And then there are 8 root transgressions for sons of noble family. That means those who have taken bodhisattva vows, who are beginners, who are not royalty, who are not ministers, who are not Shravakas. These root transgressions cause confusion, and beginners who have correctly entered the Mahayana will forfeit the entirety of their previously generated roots of virtue, and they will be in a state of transgression. They will be deprived of the happiness of gods and humans and of the Mahayana, go to lower realms, be separated from the spiritual friend, and remain in samsara a very long time. What are these 8? And the text continues, there are beings who were born in this worldly realm of afflictions and 5 impurities. As the age of the 5 degenerations, right? Because they conducted themselves in evil ways in the past, they rely upon a spiritual friend and listen to the most profound Mahayana, owing to the tiny root of virtue they possess. So they're able to hear the Mahayana, rely on a spiritual friend. Though they do so with little understanding, these sons of noble family, or let's say daughters of noble family, give birth to aspiration to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment. Some beginning bodhisattvas among them listen to the collection of sutras that present the most profound emptiness, transmit and read them. In the presence of other sentient beings who understand as little as these just mentioned, these beginning bodhisattvas who have this kind of error, they recall these sutras in great detail in word and meaning, just as they heard and understood them, and they teach them to others. When those ordinary immature beings who have not gone through arduous training hear such profound sutras, they become extremely frightened and terrified. Because they are terrified, they turn back from attaining unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and aspire to the vehicle of the Shravakas. This is the first root transgression for beginning bodhisattvas. So we talked about 5 root transgressions for royalty, 5 for ministers, 5 for Shravakas, or 8 for Shravakas, and then this is the first for beginning bodhisattvas. So I won't go through any more of them in detail, but what I will mention is in the text I've mentioned to you before, that Mark, I think it's Mark Tatz. Is it Mark Tatz? Stephen's not here today. He's the one, I think, that put up on the website this translation that Tatz did of the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on the morality chapter of the Bodhisattva Bhumi. Remember that? Anyone following me? Maybe you're all completely confused. So Asanga wrote a text about the Bodhisattvas called the Bodhisattva Bhumi, right? After he visited Maitreya, received 5 texts from Maitreya, he wrote texts and commentaries on them. Besides transmitting those 5 texts of Maitreya, one of them was called the Bodhisattva Bhumi, which is kind of like a big compendium of things. You can find that translation of that, who is it? Geshe Tarchin's student translated, who knows?
You mean Art Engel?
Art Engel translated, very big text. So that chapter on morality, Lama Tsongkhapa wrote a commentary to, which is very renowned, and I think it's Mark Tatz, I can't remember, translated that into English. So in that, on page 171, he has a list you can find if you download that text. It's on our Facebook group page. So here he's giving a list of the vows, of the 18 vows, and where they came from. So number 1, stealing property of the precious 3 jewels is defined as a defeat transgression, he says here. That's root number 1. That comes from the Akashagarbha Sutra. Number 2 from the Akashagarbha is rejection of the good doctrine is declared by the Muni as the second. Rejecting, that means abandoning the Dharma. Third, disrobing and striking a monk, even if he is immoral, throwing him to prison, casting him out of monastic life. That's the third. Committing the 5 actions of immediate retribution is the 4th. So you can, and then starting with the ministers, only one of the ministers, number 2 of the ministers' vows, to destroy a village and so forth, the Jina calls seminal transgressions, root transgression. And then of the beginnings, so of the rulers, the royal vows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are stated. One of the ministers' 5 vows is stated, to destroy a village and so forth. And then of the beginners' vows, several of them are enumerated here, describing emptiness to sentient beings whose minds are unprepared. That was similar to one that I just read from the Akashagarbha Sutra. Diverting from full awakening those proceeding toward Buddhahood. Rejecting the pratimoksha in favor of the great in favor of the great vehicle. And that means demeaning the pratimoksha, thinking, oh, I don't have to practice that. No one has to practice that if you're Mahayanist. Describing one's own good qualities for the understanding of others while deprecating someone else for gain and respect and so forth. So there are, of the beginner's vows, I think 8 of them are added in there. And then giving the property of those in retreat to those who only recite texts. These are the seminal transgressions, causes of the great beings, causes of the great hell for sentient beings. Confess them to noble Akashagarbha, standing before him in a dream. So that's in the Akashagarbha Sutra, it says that you should purify these in the dream. There is one vow from the Skill and Means Sutra, which also Tats translated, you can find on the web. That one vow, does anyone know what that one vow from the Skill and Means Sutra is? It is the vow of abandoning bodhicitta. And then there are 3 more vows from, I think from the Bodhisattva Bhumi that are mentioned by a Sangha, refusing to give to a mendicant with unconscionable attachment and stinginess. That means when someone comes to you and for something that you have enough of, and out of stinginess or miserliness, you don't give. That's one of the root vows. Striking sentient beings out of anger and out of defilement, conforming to someone else to speak a counterfeit of the doctrine.
Venerable,
Yes.
what page number on Asanga's chapter on ethics
So this is.
are you reading from? What
so
page number?
I'm not reading from a Sanga's text. I'm
Oh,
reading from Tats's Tats. I think is it Matthew Tats? I can't remember.
Mark, translated by Mark's Tats, correct?
Mark Tats. His
The commentary
translation
on
of
Khapa?
Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to Asanga's Bodhisattva Bhumi's chapter on morality. Okay.
I think that's the one I have.
Okay, good
It
for
has
you.
a green cover.
Yeah.
What page number?
It's on page 171 and 172, this chart, but it goes into details of all of these on the previous pages. The main point I'm trying to get across here is that our text here is quoting the Akashagarbha Sutra that says that a root infraction will destroy the virtues that have been generated in the past. So that was stated in the Akashagarbha Sutra of those vows, of the royal vows, the minister's vows, the Shravaka vows, and the beginner's vows. So among those, some of them, whether it be 13, I guess, are counted among the 18 vows that we now talk about. One of those 18 vows comes from the Skill and Means Sutra, and 3 of them come from the Bodhisattva Bhumi, which I assume a Sangha found from other sutras, but I don't know what sutra they come from. So in essence, the 18 root vows that we now talk about in the Tibetan tradition have these 3 sources, and they are enumerated by Shantideva in his Siksha Samuchaya. He talks about 18 vows, so he recognizes these 18 vows. So that's kind of a little bit background on that. So then,
I'm sorry, excuse me, Venerable George, I have a quick question. Did you say that Stephen had uploaded to the group Facebook page a file like from Mark Tatt's book?
right, Doris?
Oh, okay. I hadn't seen it, but
Doris?
I'll look.
Ron posted it, so just go when you're scrolling down through, look for Ron posting something, or
not Stephen, Ron, you posted it.
or you can
Thank you,
go
Ron.
Oh, okay. It's just in the files then. Thanks.
Yeah, it turns out that I was thinking that it was like bootlegged or something earlier, because the text nowadays, if you try to buy it, it costs a couple $100 or something like that if you buy from Amazon. But Mark Tatz has put it on his academia.com account. You can download it from there, or you can download it from our Facebook page where Ron had uploaded it. Is that the right terminology? He uploaded it. You can download it to you. Okay. So let's continue. So the compendium of training, that's the Siksha Samuchaya, states that gazing at the householder's life while yearning for gifts and honor swelling with manifest conceit, and forsaking the Dharma are all acts through which virtues generated in the past will be consumed and virtuous activities will fail to increase. Hopkins translates that as this is the Siksha Samachaya, right? The Siksha Samachaya states that aspiring to a household because of strong attachment to goods. So what that means is someone who is a monk gives up their ordination because strong attachment to goods, being inflated with the pride of conceit, in other words, boasting that one has attainments not yet acquired, and forsaking the doctrine are all acts that destroy the virtues formerly generated and deprive one of progress based on virtuous practice.
Here's what I found.
Siri thought I had called her up there. So what this is talking about, other ways that besides anger that will consume virtuous activities, giving up one's ordination to become a householder, swelling with manifest conceit about one's attainments, forsaking the Dharma, that means abandoning the Dharma. Remember, I've mentioned that in previous classes. That's one of the dangerous things to avoid, because abandoning the Dharma can destroy one's roots of virtue. Jimpa translates as forsaking the Dharma are all acts through which virtues generated in the past will be consumed and virtuous activities will fail to increase. Okay, are we all together? Following? Okay. Therefore, text continues, recognizing the conditions that destroy roots of virtue, we must specially strive to relinquish them. So that would mean relinquishing anger, and especially abandoning the Dharma and these others. What I have prescribed, which I, Lama Khapa, have just presented here, is but a brief summary. One should definitely read the Compendium of Sutras, the Sutra Samachaya, which Nagarjuna composed, in which I think Paul, that's the text that Paul uploaded to our Facebook page, a translation in English of that. And also you should read the Compendium of Training, the Siksha Samachaya by Shantideva, right? So to get understanding about these. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you because it's kind of, I don't think it's well known amongst all Dharma practitioners where the 18 vows, especially in the Tibetan tradition, where we recognize these 18 vows, where they came from. So majority came from the Akashagarbha Sutra. The one on abandoning bodhicitta comes from the Skill and Means, and several of them come from the Bodhisattva Bhumi. And I'm not sure if Asanga referenced those from other sutras or not. Okay. So now the next outline, rejecting anger on the basis of contemplating the numerous faults of intolerance. Or you could say, getting fed up, realizing that anger is not good when you contemplate the many faults of impatience. Okay, so the text says, this impotence caused by intolerance may damage oneself alone. This impotence caused by intolerance may damage oneself alone. The potent force that is the absence of compassion, however, damages both self and others. Does that make any sense to you? His translation. Hopkins translates this: impatience is is one who is powerless. Impatience in one who is powerless destroys only himself. That's what Jimpa is saying when he says, this impotence caused by intolerance. It doesn't make sense. Hopkins, I think, has it more correctly. Impatience in one who is powerless, in one who is impotent, that doesn't have a lot of ability to influence others, destroys only himself, right? But if you have power and but impatience in the powerful and non-compassionate destroys both self and others. Follow? Rachel, if you don't have any power, if you're impotent, you don't have any authority, you get angry, it just destroys yourself. But if you have power to influence others, or maybe you're a powerful person and because of your anger, you can strike them and steal from them and kill them, then that destroys both you and others.
But does it destroy their virtue or just
No,
destroy?
it means it damages, it not only damages you in terms of creating negative karma and burning up your virtues, but if you're powerful, your anger also can influence others and harm them because you strike out and you harm them. I think that's what it's meaning. So this is root verse 3:7. Wrath disfigures your face and leads you to what is unwholesome. It robs your mind of the judgment of what is right and wrong. Intolerance or impatience is swift to throw you to the lower realm. Jeffrey says, it creates ugly form, that is anger, right? Leads to the unholy and robs discrimination that knows right and wrong. Through impatience, one is quickly cast into bad migration. Making sense? When you read that, Ida, does it make sense to you? Yeah. Anna? You okay? Sean, you okay? You're thinking? Okay, good. So the commentary to that verse, this is the 7th verse of the 3rd chapter. Oops, somehow, and we're still on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, somehow, because someone called me, how do I get back on here again? Can you folks see me, hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Try.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Someone called me and because my MacBook is connected to the same, anyway. Okay. Where are we? So this is commenting on the 7th verse of the 3rd chapter, the chapter on patience in Madhyamaka, the Karaka. So Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says, the instant it arises, wrath or anger disfigures your face and leads you to what is unwholesome, right? So when it's here is talking about the numerous faults of anger or impatience or intolerance. When you see someone who's angry, they look unattractive. They generally don't look attractive, right? Maybe if you are a politician and the person who's getting angry you're a follower of them. I won't mention any names. You can imagine who I'm talking about. They get angry and maybe you can find that attractive, but that generally that's not considered attractive when you get angry. Your face is red and contorted and so forth, leads you to what is unwholesome. And it robs your mind of the judgment that helps evaluate what is right to do and what is wrong to do. So, yeah, anger, like all klesha, remember the distinguishing characteristic of klesha in general is that it causes the peacefulness of your mind to be lost, you become disturbed, and it causes cloudiness in the mind to decide what is right and what is wrong. So anger has that particular quality also. This intolerance, quote, or comma, anger, is swift to throw you to the lower realms after death. So it creates negative karma besides burning up your virtues. So contemplate these ill consequences, and with the thought, I will never give opportunity to anger. Make that kind of resolution in your mind. Prevent anger with that kind of thought. That section is very short, right? Rejecting anger on the basis of contemplating the numerous faults of intolerance or of anger. And the next section, the appropriateness. So it was, what did he say? He didn't say inappropriate, but previous here. So the appropriateness of cultivating patience, forbearance. So they're twofold. Contemplating the numerous qualities of patience or forbearance, as Jimpa likes to translate it here, and a summary with advice to cultivate forbearance. So the first section, contemplating the numerous qualities of patience. And Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says, if the above are the faults of intolerance, impatience, what are the qualities of the opposite? Forbearance or patience. Bad, impatience is bad. Why is patience good? So this is the last line of the 7th stanza, and the next 4 lines of stanza 8 in the 3rd chapter of the Madhyamaka. But forbearance brings qualities opposite to those just described. Forbearance, patience, makes you attractive and dear to the sublime ones. So sometimes you wonder, why do lamas, holy beings are attracted to some people? Generally, those who are more calm and patient. Not only is your impatience telegraphed by your appearance, when you get angry, but there's some kind of inner calm that they can perceive. You become wise in knowing what is appropriate and what is not. That's an advantage of patience. Afterwards, you gain birth as a deva or a human. Deva means the devas of the desire realm or the form or formless realm, or as a human, because you create virtuous karma by being patient, and it secures the exhaustion of negative karma. What does that mean? It secures the exhaustion of negative karma. Does anyone know? Anyone? David, you're about to say something?
Yeah, the patience or forbearance allows the fruition of negative karma to kind of exhaust itself. Is that correct?
Well, it secures the exhaustion of negative karma. Let's see how Jeffrey translates this.
He says extinguishment.
Patience creates qualities opposite to those explained above. Through patience comes beauty, dearness to the holy. Holy see you as dear to them because you're patient. Skill in discriminating between the right and wrong. Birth afterwards as a human or God, and the extinguishment of non-virtue. Extinguishment of non-virtue. So this will have to be, we have to understand from the commentary. So the commentary says, but practicing forbearance brings qualities opposite to those faults of anger just described. For example, practicing forbearance makes you attractive in physical appearance. You become dear to or cherished by the sublime ones. So that's important. You know, when you wonder within the teachings, you know, who the Dalai Lama is attracted to. You might say it's not attracted because your attractive body or something like that, but because you have virtuous qualities, premier of among which are patience. You know, you're dear to them, and you become wise in knowing what is appropriate or correct and what is not appropriate or correct. What is, you know what you shouldn't do, because your mind is clear and not turbulent due to anger. Afterwards, following your death, you gain birth as a deva or human, and it secures the exhaustion of your negative karma generated through anger, and so on in the past. Contemplating these benefits develop the power of forbearance. So Jeffrey translates that last thing. It removes non-virtues accumulated through anger and so forth. How does it do that? Practicing patience through cultivating patience gives these various virtues. You attain a beautiful body and so forth, and removes non-virtues accumulated through anger and so forth. So you've created non-virtuous karma, right? Due to anger. We all have, probably, unless you're highly realized. We have some negative karma because of anger. How does patience now remove those negative karmas? Usually we talk about how do you remove negative seeds of, negative karmic seeds. You apply the four opponent forces, generally, right? Or you use the universal panacea of meditating on emptiness, right? So how does patience remove non-virtues accumulated through anger and so forth, meaning abandoning the Dharma and these other things that create vast negative karma? Anyone have an idea?
Doesn't the virtues, though, if we have the negative karma of killing things, right, and then we begin to not kill things, that's a virtue. Doesn't that, the same as purification? At least that's what my understanding was.
Well, here's one thought. When good thinking. Good. So in general, when you create a negative karma, it can have how many effects? You remember? 4. Rachel says 4. Well, her fingers say 4. Okay. One is the maturation effect, rebirth in the lower realms. If it's a path of action, you've got all the limbs of the action, it can throw you into the lower realms. Then you have 3 more results. We've mentioned this many times, but just to go over it again, so you should know this. 2 of them are often together. You say the effects similar to the cause. One of those effects is similar to the cause as an action. So if you've killed before, you'll kill again, right? You have that habitual energy, habit energy. And one is the effect similar to the cause as an experience. If you've killed in the past, you might be killed yourself, or you will have dangers and other kinds of events that your medicine will not work well for you and so forth. And then there's the environmental effect that you'll be born in a dangerous area and so forth. So among those, which is of those effects is the most, besides rebirth in the lower realms, that's obviously bad, which of the other three are the most dangerous? Do you know? What would you say? Don, what would you say of those three other results, which is the most pernicious? Come on, unmute. I want to hear you thinking this one out. No, you're muted. Just press your, there you go.
Am I still muted?
Yeah, you're okay. You're okay. I hear you.
Okay. I would think the throwing karma into our next life would be the most.
Okay, other than that, what's the most pernicious of the other three?
The results, actions similar to the cause.
Yeah, I think so. Because it causes continuity of that action. So if you're patient, you can start as with David's thinking, you can cut off the continuity of that negative action in the future. You were angry in the past, you created negative karma. One of the results of which would be getting angry again in the future. So if you practice patience now, that can help to exhaust the negative karma gathered through anger, which that particular effect of the effect similar to the cause as an action. Thank you, Don. I think that's right. So I don't know how, other than that, how directly practicing patience can cause negative karma gathered through anger to be exhausted. What do you think? Any idea? Diana, do you have any thought? No?
Doesn't it mean
go on, Don. Yeah.
Doesn't it mean we're not going to continue to create the causes and conditions for that negative karma to ripen?
Well, causes and conditions for that negative karma to ripen would be what?
Intolerance.
Well, maybe that can cause it. That might cause more karma, but usually the causes and conditions for the negative karma to ripen would be craving and grasping among the 12 links, right? Rocio, what are you thinking?
I don't know for what reason I want to disagree on this one, but just, because I do believe it's environmental, the environmental effects. But my reasoning would be is like the effect similar to to the cause. Well, if I'm patient and something is happening to me that is similar, I'm patient, it doesn't matter. Or repeating the action, again, I'm patient, I'm not going to repeat it. But if the whole environment is against me and everything around me is, is negative, then impatient, can be too weak to stand all the environmental karma.
Right. So here it's saying that patience helps to exhaust or secures the exhaustion of negative karma gathered through anger. Exhausts that karma. It sounds like what that means is that it purifies that karma. Maybe in a sense, that's a good thought, that if you're patient, then the irritating noise of the guy with the leaf blower next door. I don't know if you, I don't know. Do you have that in Germany also, Nadine? Leaf blowers, these things that make
Yes.
Maybe that's kind of what Roche say, or some other kind of irritating things that are environmental effects of your negative, of your anger in the past, that can be tolerated, but that doesn't exhaust them in the sense. So I'm not quite sure what's being gotten at there. Diana, you have thought.
Is there any chance that just popped in my head? I'm not sure. Is there any chance it could also mean, like, when we're practicing virtues, like you can make prayers to like have karma ripen here in the human realm as something smaller versus it being a throwing karma to the lower realms. Could it mean that as well, that it exhausted in terms of it ripening in smaller ways?
I don't know. Generally, we can pray that our negative karma ripen now. We can create virtuous actions. Like, for instance, after my 3-year retreat, I came down with Lyme disease and prostate cancer and several other things. And Lama Zopa, through Roger, I didn't speak directly. Lama Zopa said, "Oh, your retreat must have been very successful because this negative karma is being exhausted now." Maybe like that, yeah. Rachel, what do you think?
Well, I have fire ants biting me, and it's incredibly painful. So I'm definitely purifying a whole bunch. But I keep thinking of, and I don't know, but you keep asking. So what about to exhaust negative karma? Are we talking about attaining some liberation and therefore, the whole wisdom realizing emptiness? So what is the relationship with being patient and having this to accomplishing that goal?
Yeah, maybe indirectly. Yeah. That as you're patient, you have forbearance, you can study, you don't get frustrated in studying, you can realize emptiness and exhaustion. It's a little bit circuitous. So I'm not quite sure what's meant by that. I will check with some other of my comrades in the Dharma. So anyway, you can see the advantages of patience. But this last one, it secures the exhaustion of your negative karma gathered through anger and so forth in the past. Not so clear to me. So if you come up with any good thoughts, let me know. So let's continue. So the next section says a summary with advice to cultivate forbearance. Okay. Or as Jeffrey says, summary exhortation to observe patience. So Chandrakirti's stanza 9 in his Karikas says, knowing the faults and benefits of anger and forbearance. So that kind of construction comes often in Buddhism and probably other places too. You're saying two things. You're saying the faults and benefits. It's not saying the faults and benefits of anger. It's saying faults goes with the anger and the benefits goes with the forbearance, right? So knowing the faults and benefits respectively, let's say, of anger and forbearance, because anger doesn't have any benefits and forbearance doesn't have any faults, respectively, of ordinary beings and bodhisattvas, shun intolerance, and cultivate swiftly and constantly the forbearance praised by the Aryas, Arya beings. So the commentary says, as described above, knowing the faults or the ill consequences of ordinary beings experiencing anger and the benefits of a bodhisattva's forbearance, and not just the benefits of the bodhisattva's forbearance, also for ordinary beings, shun intolerance and cultivate swiftly and constantly, that is, at all times, forbearance that is praised by the Aryas. So, or do we just say here? So Jeffrey translates this as ordinary beings and conquerors' children, realizing the faults of anger and advantages of patience, and forsaking impatience, the faults of anger and the advantages of patience and forsaking impatience should quickly and always observe the patience observed by the superior beings, by Aryas. And he translates that next little sentence there, or two sentences, or one sentence. One should realize, as explained above, the disadvantageous faults of common beings' anger and the beneficial advantages of conquerors' children's patience. Having forsaken impatience, one should always observe the patience observed by superior beings. Are there only beneficial advantages of the conqueror's children's patience? What do you think? Ida, what do you think? You just press the space. There you go.
It doesn't work for me for some reason when I press that. No, I think it's also for ordinary beings like ourselves.
Paul, are you contemplating or are you just taking a quick nap?
No, I was contemplating it.
What do you think? I'm not quite sure. Both translate it the same way.
I was wondering if it was referring to patience from the standpoint of a bodhisattva who doesn't objectify things, and like that's the perfection of patience. I was wondering if that's what it was a reference to.
So the disadvantageous faults of common beings' anger, that's quite clear, and the beneficial advantages of conquerors' children, bodhisattvas' patience. Yeah, I would think there's also beneficial advantages of ordinary beings' patience.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, is there such a thing as ordinary beings' patience? Or is it just tolerance, and that they're not actually patient, but to actually have proper patience that
ordinary beings here would be non-Aryas. So that would certainly be bodhisattvas on the path of accumulation and path of preparation. And certainly they have patience. They're trying to emulate. We should now, even though we're not even on the path, well, I'm not even on the path of accumulation, don't even have bodhicitta, we should try to practice in some way, emulate these practices of the bodhisattvas. So we should try to practice patience, not just tolerate it, just bearing with it, but we should we should see the advantages of that and so forth. I don't think it's only Arya bodhisattvas who can practice patience.
So then is it possible that it's referring to patience from the perspective of not objectifying self and other and activity?
Yeah, interesting. One would think that there would be some commentary here if there was some subtle distinction, but there's nothing here. So I'll leave it to you to contemplate for a while. There's some good material, grist for the mill of contemplation here. So that particular sentence, the beneficial advantages of conquerors' children's patience, as though there was no beneficial advantage of ordinary beings' patience. I'm not quite sure. Okay. So let's go on. So next section, the divisions of the perfection of patience, the divisions of the perfection of forbearance or patience gone beyond, right? When we say perfection, paramita, often when we say the prajna paramita, we say the wisdom, some Edward Conze would like to translate it, the wisdom gone beyond, rather than just perfection. So gone, the actual gone beyond is gone to the other shore is the actual perfection, right? That means that only the Buddha has that because he's gone to the shore of Buddhahood, but we're practicing that. So the 10th stanza, Karika says, forbearance, even dedicated toward perfect Buddhahood, is mundane if objectified in terms of the three factors. We've alluded to this before. If there is no such objectification, if there's no grasping to phenomena as being inherently existent, the Buddha said, this is a perfection that indeed transcends the world. So Jeffrey translates that as, though dedicated to enlightenment of perfect Buddhahood, patience is mundane if one apprehends the three spheres. That means one thinks of the three spheres. In the case of patience, might be, you can choose different three. The person who's being patient, the object with respect to whom one is being patient, whether it's a human being or a branch that's slapped you in the face or the hammer that's hit you on the thumb, and the act of patience. If one perceives all of them as inherently existent, that's mundane patience. If one perceives them as empty of inherent existence, that's supramundane patience. Patience that does not involve such apprehension, Buddha taught, as a perfection supramundane, as a supramundane perfection. Okay, so the commentary says, the division of the perfection of forbearance into two, mundane and supramundane, is presented in the 4 lines beginning, forbearance even dedicated toward perfect Buddhahood. So that's the first line of that stanza, right? This distinction can be understood on the basis of what has been already explained in the relation to the first 2 perfections. So when we talked about perfection of giving, perfection of morality, we said there was a mundane and a supramundane version, depending upon whether one apprehended them within the emptiness of the 3 spheres. So you might wonder why it says in the text here, the division of the perfection of forbearance into 2, mundane and supramundane, is presented in the 4 lines beginning. They were just above. The reason is because in Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, he generally doesn't quote the karikas as Jimpa has inserted and as Jeffrey has inserted into the text at the appropriate places. It's just running commentary, right? He doesn't quote the karikas. So in his commentary, he said, beginning with those 4 lines, beginning with patience dedicated to a perfect Buddhahood, even if dedicated to a perfect Buddhahood is mundane, he's pointing out the karika, although he's not mentioning it in the actual Tibetan text itself. Okay. So then, so that finishes that section. Okay, the division of the perfection of patience, mundane and supramundane. So then the next section, the other pure qualities that arise on this ground. Okay, so this is the first 2 lines of stanza 11. On this ground, the third bhumi, the bodhisattva attains absorptions and clairvoyance. Here, attachment and aversion come to exhaust completely. Where is it? Or as Jeffrey says, on this ground, the conqueror's child has the concentrations and clairvoyances. Desire and hatred are extinguished. Let's see here. We have Kondro, Trodang. Oh no, what is this? Verse 11. Oh, I don't have the Tibetan right here. I can't tell you what this is. So let's just read a little further. Just as on this third ground, the bodhisattva attains purity of the perfection of forbearance, In the same way, they attain the purity of the four absorptions, the four dhyana, such as the first level of absorption, such as the first form absorption, the second form absorption, the third form absorption, the fourth form absorption, the four levels of the form realm, right? And exemplified by this, they will attain the four formless attainments: infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothing at all, or he translates here nothingness, and the peak of existence. Are you familiar with those? You know the four form absorptions. That's where the Brahma, that's called the Brahma realm, right? If you were to be born into that, that's where there are beings. You don't have the same kind of interaction as in the desire realm, but you do have forms. In the formless realm, you don't notice anyone else. You're just concentrated on infinite space. What does he say here? Infinite space, the first formless absorption, infinite consciousness. So one would attain those states by concentrating that there is everything is just, from the form realm, so where you still have a sense of space and so of form and so forth. You think that there is no form. Everything is just space. So space is without any forms in it. And then you would meditate on everything is just consciousness, or everything, there is nothing at all. Those are the three states. And then the state, the fourth formless absorption, the peak of existence. What is another name for that? I think John's disappeared. So, Paul, you know? The peak cyclic existence.
I knew once upon a time. I'm forgetting. Sorry.
Yeah, I think something like not with discrimination and not without discrimination, but the subtlety meaning it doesn't have any discrimination of anything, but it's not without subtle discrimination. So those one develops a special facility of those. You might wonder, why are they mentioned here on the third ground? Because it's the fourth ground that's supposed to have the perfection of dhyana, right? You notice the word Jimpa puts in parentheses there, dhyana, the four absorptions, and by implication, the four formless absorptions. You would think that they would appear in the next ground, but here there's a special purity of them. You don't have the same expertise of them as you do on the fourth ground, but you're starting now to have, kind of like in these other cases, you have glimmerings of what is coming next. So you have a special facility in them, but not as much as on the fourth ground when you have the special practice of the perfection of dhyana. And exemplified by this, he will attain the four formless attainments, the four immeasurables, immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. Are they associated with any of the form or formless absorptions? Do you know? The four immeasurables? There's four, right? Nadine, you're thinking, no?
They are called Brahma Viharas.
They're called Brahma Viharas, so the abodes of Brahma. So they are associated with the four form absorptions. So in the sense that in the form realm, well, let's say, what is the first one here? We say loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic, joy, and equanimity. In those 4 form absorptions, one has perfection of these 4 immeasurables. So they are also called the 4 abodes of Brahma, or the 4 the Brahma Viharas. One has, so what does it say? One has one attains the 4 immeasurables, and the 5 types of clairvoyance. What do we call here? The 5 pure clairvoyances, Jeffrey translates. Jimpa says supernatural feats, divine ears. It sounds like usually we say divine ear, divine knowledge of others' minds, recollection of previous lives, and divine eyes, or the divine eye. Jeffrey says magical creation. So of the what Jimper translates here as supernatural feats is what we call the ability to make magical creation. So a person who has achieved the form realm absorptions has the ability to create emanations. This is different than the ability when we talked about the bodhisattva. Remember, on the various bhumis, it said that they could emanate 100 bodies, and then 1,000 bodies, and then multiple of those with entourages and so forth. Here, you can have these mundane cities, these 5 kinds of what does he call them? 5 kinds of clairvoyance. Is that what we're calling here? What happened? Oh, I lost my page. Here we go. The 5 pure clairvoyances, mushe. So magical creations means that you could create a donkey that other people could sit on, and so forth. You could create other kinds of beings and so forth. You have the divine ear, which is the ability to hear teachings in other realms. So, for instance, or let's say if the Dalai Lama is teaching in the Beacon Theater in New York, and you don't have the money to buy the ticket, you could, and it's not being broadcast on the internet, you could actually tune in with the divine ear. You could hear that, or not just in New York City, in other realms when the Buddhas are teaching. Divine eye, which is able to see distant objects and see other Buddha realms. Where did it come? Magical creation, divine ear, knowing others' minds, remembering former lives, and divine eye. Knowing others' minds, so you have the clairvoyance to know what other people are thinking, but you have had this definitely before, and the ability to remember former lives, the clairvoyance that remembers for former lives. So it's at that point that there is no longer any doubt about reincarnation, but these take place even on the path of preparation. When you have a union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight, you can develop these clairvoyances. So what's said here is, it says, as exemplified by this, he will attain the 4 formless attainments, the 4 immeasurables, and the 5 types of clairvoyance. Here, Jeffrey says the 5 pure clairvoyances. So I think there's a distinction here, because you would have had these clairvoyances beforehand, even on the path of preparation. Okay, let me go a little bit further here. Although the bodhisattva, that 3rd grounder, may enter and exit these absorption states and formless states seeing that they help to complete the causes of awakening, they will take.
I didn't get that. Could you try?
my watch again. He will take birth through the power of aspirational prayers, aspiration prayers, thinking especially of this. He will not take birth through the power of the mundane absorptions and formless absorptions. Jeffrey translates, though he enters into and rises from the concentrations, this is talking about the third grounder, he enters into absorptions for various reasons, right? And the formless absorptions. He is intent on seeing the thorough completion of the causes of enlightenment. So implication meaning they don't enter into the absorptions or into the concentrations, the four concentrations of the form realm or the formless absorptions, merely as in the Hinayana, those are thought to be abodes of pleasure. One of my friends, maybe some of you have heard, maybe not, no one in this class, what's his name? Achan Sumedho. Have any of you heard of Achan Sumedho? Ron, have you heard? Who is Achan Sumedho?
Well, it's Theravada, right? He was Theravada teacher.
Right. Did I say Sumedho? No. Who am I thinking of? Is it the Australian? Not Sumedho. Sumedho is American. Achan Brahm. Achan Brahm, they call him. Achan Brahm. He's situated in Australia. He actually studied physics also. Like when we met, we were talking about physics. So he's become very famous in the Far East, in Singapore and other places. He teaches in English. He's he's Australian. He has a monastery outside of where is it? Okay, I can't remember exactly where. Not Melbourne, another place. And he tells me that his monks, he emphasizes the absorptions, the form realm absorptions, because it's kind of like mental candy for the monks. When the monks are, distraught, or the problems of this life are too much, they meditate on the form absorptions. They go into the first concentration, second concentration, and they experience joy and so forth. So this is not what the Mahayanas do. This is kind of. I remember someone at Land of Medicine Buddha when I was there. I think Don and Diana may remember. There was one lady who used to refer to men, attractive men, as eye candy. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, something that's pleasant we talk about as candy. So it's kind of like mental candy for the Theravada monks. So here he says, though he enters into and rises from the concentrations and formless absorptions, he is intent on seeing the thorough completion of the causes of enlightenment. So he doesn't do it just for mental candy, in other words. Does it make sense? Rachel, it makes sense to you? No? Okay. So there are different reasons for entering into the form and formless absorption. Some of them are just to get away from the problems of this life. Thus he is born, or let me read from Jimpa's translation here. Although he may enter and exit these absorption states and formless states, seeing that they help to complete the causes of awakening. So Jimpa and Hopkins take a different tack on that. Hopkins says, though he enters into these and rises from concentrations and formless absorptions, although he does that, he is intent on seeing through the completion of the causes of enlightenment. Whereas Jimpa says, although he may enter and exit these absorption states and formless states, seeing that they help to complete the causes of awakening. It's different take on that, right? He will take birth through the power of aspiration prayers, thinking especially of this. He will not take birth through the power of the mundane absorptions and formless attainments. He is able to do this starting from the first ground, right? He can take rebirth by the power of his prayers and aspirations to cause virtuous seeds in his mind stream to ripen so that he can take birth where he wants. But on this ground, the bodhisattva attains a higher training in the concentration that is far superior to previous grounds. And with that, he experiences greater temptation to take birth through such power. Or as Hopkins says, there are now greater doubts about whether he might be reborn by the power of these concentrations and absorptions. It's not as though, I think Jimpa's again mistranslated that it's not that he has greater temptation, that there are doubts about whether he can take birth through such power. This is why this point is mentioned here. And here on this ground, attachment and aversion come to exhaust completely, thus attaining their cessation. So I think we mentioned a little bit about that before. This is where we're going to end right here. Why is it on the third ground that attachment and aversion come to exhaust completely? Wasn't that one in one of the root verses before, wasn't it? We talked about that. Why is it? Well, on the first ground, what have you exhausted? Have you exhausted any innate attachment or hatred or aversion on the first ground? I can see some people thinking. Rachel's thinking. Rosie is thinking. Doris, on the first ground, what have you exhausted or ceased?
That would be the acquired, not the innate.
Right. You haven't exhausted any innate delusions or klesha on the first ground. On the second ground, you have ceased. You have true cessation of some of the attachment of the you have say cessation of attachment to the desire realm, but not yet the attachment of the form realm, form and formless realms. They have subtle kind of attachment, whereas there's no hatred or anger in the form realm or formless realm, so you don't have to worry about that. But here on the third realm, on the third ground, he has attachment and aversion have come to exhaust completely, thus attaining their cessation. So that means that here on the third ground, especially attachment in the form and formless realms has been, innate attachment has been exhausted. So you don't have any more worldly attachment, put it that way. Okay, so we're going to stop there. So we're going to begin next time with the conjunction and carries the meaning of also. So we're going to start there next time. Let me add a note. That's going to be, that's page, what page are we in Jimpa?
144, Venerable George.
144 in Jimpa. And in Hopkins,
In mine, it's 143.
143.
Oh, 143, not 144. And in Hopkins?
219, Honorable George.
219. Usually Don is right on top of that. He usually has that because that's the text he has. Okay, so we're going to begin there next time. And so any questions before we finish? How are we doing? Was this difficult today? Oh, Ida, you have a question.
I have one question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in the, let's see, the third bhumi, attachment and hatred are ceased, but is it from the desire realm or the form realm?
Okay, so there is attachment and hatred in the desire realm, right? Is there attachment and hatred in the form realm?
I think so, yeah.
There's no hatred in the desire.
Attachment there is, I believe, but no hatred.
Okay, so if you said attachment and hatred, and in the formless realm, there's no anger, but there is attachment. So it's here on the third ground that the Bodhisattva, on the second ground, they got rid of their innate attachment to the desire realm. And on the third ground, they got rid of the attachment of the form and formless realms. So you could say that here on this ground, attachment and inversion come to be completely exhausted because you've got rid of all of the attachment, right? There wasn't, and you've gotten rid of the anger or hatred earlier of the desire realm. That's kind of the point. Anyone else?
I was feeling a little bit like Siri, I think.
A little bit like Syria?
Yeah, about a little bit like Siri on your watch phone.
Oh yeah, why is that?
Because she was saying, I don't understand what you're saying.
Very clever. Yeah, I don't know. It's picking up on something that doesn't sound like SIRI sometime. And I don't understand what you're saying. Okay. I thought some grist for the mill. So go back over some of these points that we said a little bit ambiguous. See if you can come up with any solutions. We're going to continue from there next time. I think we're on track to finish the first 5 bhumis before our August break. That's my hope, so that when we come back in September, we can start the 6th bhumi. So that would be really great. So, Karen, could you put up the dedication prayers? So let's say in Tibetan. Gewadi Nyurdudan Lama Sangye Drubgyurne Droa Chikyang Balupa De Sala Kupasho Changchub Semchog Rinpoche Make Panam Ke Gyurchik Ke Panyampa Me Payang Gone Gong Tu Belbasho. And then, as Lama Zopa has passed away, there's no longer a long life prayer. We'll recite the prayer for his quick return after this, but prayer for our spiritual friends that are still alive, Dalai Lama, other great beings, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures. You are the supreme gateway for us fortunate beings traveling to liberation, engaging as you do with skillful means, moved by love, illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. And then the prayer by His Holiness, requesting, for, making prayers for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's reincarnation. The implication being that in our minds, there might be obstacles. From his side, there's no obstacle to coming back, but from our side, karmic obstacles in our minds could prevent the quick reincarnation recognition. So, Peerless Teacher, an assembly of children of the victorious ones, the Bodhisattvas, you Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang Drakpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, who is the spiritual father of these two spiritual sons, Gyaltsab-je and Kedrup-je, along with the lineage masters, all objects of refuge of infinite realms. Please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Kind of like, we want this, we want it all, and we want it now. Holding and spreading, you, Lama Zopa, who held and spread Shakyamuni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake both of the victorious one's teachings, which are the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and as well striving for mother's living beings, sentient beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss for us. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta, of the conqueror's children, the children of the victorious one, the bodhisattvas, may the smile of a reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. So dedicate also our merits within the emptiness of the three spheres as you are able. The merits that were created exist conventionally as mere imputations. They are empty of inherent existence, although they can be contemplated and thought about. The goals that are dedicated to are achievement, enlightenment, the quick recognition of the reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and so forth. These exist conceptually, conventionally, as mere imputations, but are empty of inherent existence. The act of dedication, my wishing that these merits ripen in those ways, a process, it can't be found anywhere. It's just a name imputed to that process of dedication. It's empty of inherent existence. Dedicating within the emptiness of the three spheres helps to protect our roots of virtue from destruction through anger and other negative states of mind, whereas just the conventional dedication only preserves them from being exhausted in one action, in one ripening in the future. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again. We have discussion group on Monday. If you happen to have time, was it 2:00, I guess, Eastern time? Is that right? 2:00, right? And we'll continue class next week. Tomorrow is what?
Sakadawa.
I thought you'd say Sunday. All right. Sakadawa. Actually, this whole month, lunar month is called Sakadawa. Dawa means moon and month. That's our word moon also, a month also has origin from moon. So when we say Sakadawa, sometimes what we mean is the full moon of Sakadawa, which is tomorrow. And so this is one of the most powerful karmic multiplying days. So if there are any activities that you can do tomorrow, prostrations, recitation, meditation on emptiness, reading the illumination of the intent, reciting mantras, making offerings, and so forth. Tomorrow is an exceptional day to do that. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Be good.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much.